Hello and welcome to another episode of the RPG Rundown. My name is Seth.
And I'm Jeff. From Dungeons to Deep Space, we've got the systems and the stories for your table. Today, we're looking back at our third season and the incredible games and tools that we've covered and gotten to take a look at. And also, at the end, we're going to be taking a critical look at our Draw Steel playtest.
Absolutely. This is our last episode for our third season before the holiday break. It all started with Jeff and I finally getting to meet in person.
We did.
And that brings us into our recap discussion because we started the season super strong with Jeff and I meeting at Gen Con just before we started this season. And it was a meeting 4 years in the making. We've known each other for at least 6, maybe 8 years. But, with me being like, hey, let me DM for your first time ever to play D&D.
Indeed. Look at where we are now.
Look at where we are now. We have this awesome podcast exploring all sorts of other TTRPGs, but also talking about our, great love and enjoyment of D&D and storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
But then also at Gen Con, we got to meet Tierney and Luke. I guess I'd already met Luke before, and you'd already met Luke before.
I'd already met Luke before. We got to see Luke again.
We got to see Luke again, with whom we love. And who was like, the organizer for the mission trips to like Gen Con. And then all the other Love Thy Nerd peeps that we got to meet and hang out with. Love you guys. You're awesome. So epic beginning to this season. And
then?
Even though that was kind of like where it started, and we had plans for recording way more at Gen Con.
Right. We definitely did. And we quickly
we
realized there's not as much time as you want there to be.
We didn't dedicate the time to it, unfortunately. But what we really kicked off with was our second point of our recap here.
Yeah, and that was something we actually got to experience at Gen Con, and that was what we understood to be called at that time the Stormlight RPG. However, they released the day after Gen Con with the name Cosmere RPG. But while we were there, we were able to go and camp out in the storm. Maybe not really camp out, but we hung out there for a while.
Pretty close.
Got to talk to some of the game designers and some really cool people that were involved. Got to take pictures, look at minis, buy things, and finally we were able to get into a playtest of Stormlight RPG or Cosmere RPG, and we got to actually play that together and play it for the first time. Was an absolute blast. And then we later did a playtest here with our friends from Pocket Dimension and did a review of Stormlight RPG, or oh my gosh, I can't fix it in my head, Cosmere RPG, because eventually it will not just be Stormlight, it'll also be Mistborn and such.
Mm-hmm.
But yes,
and Evanthus. So
yes, and so it continue to expand, but that was I think our first playtest of the season.
It was, and we had to get it out. That that actually kind of started our season early because we came back from Gen Con and we didn't have plans to start for like another 2 weeks, but we were like, nope, we've got to get this episode out because
the game was
they're
releasing.
Launching it. Yeah. They're launching the Kickstarter. It went crazy. And so, it's that was a lot of fun. But then also we got to hear so much about the new 2024 Wizards of the Coast D&D rules changes. We got to see the launch of the Player's Handbook and then a whole bunch of upcoming stuff for the DM's Guide. And I'll definitely, I was not excited going into Gen Con for it.
Right.
I think WotC had kind of done WotC things and not, gotten a lot of goodwill with some of the things that they were changing. However, I'm hearing more positive things, and I'm hearing a lot of positive things about the DM's Guide, and so I'm a lot more interested in that when it finally releases, which I think is any time now, honestly. I think it's this month.
Okay.
I could be wrong. Or
Right.
maybe it's
I,
just some of the
I
early people.
I haven't looked as much into it, but
I
I
haven't
am
either.
curious to see what changes and things have come.
So I've been listening to a few podcasts and yeah, there's a lot of good things coming. But at the same time, because I spent all the money on the 2014 books and stuff like that, I'm less inclined to buy them physically. And
Right.
so I will probably wait for some sale on D&D Beyond or
Yeah.
something like that, and pick them up digitally. Just because, yeah, unless I really lean into it, I've picked up other things that I'm interested in and want to
Yeah.
play. Um,
Yeah.
so
This is, I mean, I'll be honest right now. I've play tested so many games now. Like, I don't know. Like, whenever I start up a new campaign, I feel like I'm going to start up one of the new games. I could be wrong because it's like D&D is so easy to get back into because all
it's
my players already
true.
play D&D. And so it's
It's
like there's no
true.
learning curve. But man, some of these games we played has really got me wanting to explore them further.
It really has, and I think when we started the podcast, we were like, okay, we want to play test all these different systems, and we still
Right.
have like a short list of like
Right.
20 to
Yeah.
30
Yeah.
that we
The short
want to
list just has the
play.
ones we want to play test on it. Yeah.
Yes, but the ones that we've been play testing were the ones that have actually kind of come out after our initial list.
Right. So
Um,
really, we haven't hit anything that is actually on the list.
Not recently,
I
but
mean, we've hit a few things. That's not
yeah.
true. We've hit a few things that were on the list, but
But that said, I totally agree, and I feel like there's part of me that wants to say plan out 2025 and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to play a 3-session mini adventure in
right,
each system, or something like that. Like where you play
right,
like one a month, or maybe a 6-session and you could play if you can get it in 2 a month or
right.
something.
Yeah,
That seems like a lot considering all of our other plans, but I
yeah,
would love to do something like that where we do a couple of mini adventures in one of these other systems because I
right,
think they absolutely deserve to be more fleshed out. Now that
yeah.
said, the main 3 that we have talked about this season is, well, I guess we've talked about 4. We talked about DC-20. We talked about Daggerheart a little bit, but mostly Cosmere and Draw Steel.
Hmm.
Um,
These were
but
two. That was our two big ones for this season.
yeah, but none of those are out yet technically.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel like we shouldn't try to do an adventure in any of those until they're closer to release.
Yes, I do agree with that, and that's like we're gonna get into Draw Still in a few minutes, but
Yeah.
like as much as I love the game of Draw Steel, at its current state, I don't know how much I would want to introduce like a new player to it. We'll get into that
Yeah.
in just a little while, but exactly that. Like once it's fully released, or at least more polished than what it is right now, and
Hmm.
same with like once those drop, I would be very interested in running a
Yeah.
longer. And so, I mean, same with like Daggerheart and DC-20, but even since we play tested those, there's been several updates to the rules and things that
Yeah.
we'd have to kind of update our own knowledge on and then play test. But I would love to run like a longer adventure in one of those.
And I feel like that's unfortunately some of the nature of the TTRPG industry is that we do get these early looks at them
Right.
and get excited and then we got to wait,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
speaking of
Great
that, that's
point.
kind of how it's kind of that Kickstarter culture, right?
Yeah.
Um, because even as some of the things we covered this season were some of the Kickstarter rewards. Like I know I received several. I received my Tales of the Valiant Game
Right.
Master Guide, which I am looking forward to comparing to the new 2024 DM's Guide, because I think there's going to be a lot of overlap. Not necessarily in the same rules, but they're going to cover a lot of the same things. Like have a lot better rules for campaign building, because like I know this one does a lot better rules for home bases for your party, stuff like that.
Right.
And then also, like sometimes there's a long wait. Like I had to wait 3 years for my pixel dice, for
Right. Yeah.
Kickstarter, and I patiently waited, and I really like it. I think it's fantastic. there was a comment on our video from that about how the devs saw it, and we're like, yeah, we're absolutely planning to do some of these things.
Nice.
But I think that, like, we're super excited about Cosmere RPG, and we're supposed to get, hopefully in 2025, the Stormlight version, which is really what I ordered. I only ordered the Stormlight version of it in the Kickstarter, because I figured I would wait and get the Mistborn, because Mistborn's not going to come out for like 2 years.
Right. Yeah.
Which again, I understand. There's a lot of development that has to go into it.
Right.
But yeah, this Kickstarter culture definitely makes it hard sometimes, and so part of that, I feel like next year for 2025, Jeff, I feel like we need to get back to some of our list of TTRPGs that are out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That are fully out and released.
We should like publish the list too, just to like get some feedback on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be fantastic.
Put out there somewhere for other people to see it.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like we've been diving deep into these fantasy. I kind of want some sci-fi. I feel like
I still want to do a superhero. I've yet to play a superhero TTRPG. We know that is my favorite genre.
It is. I don't agree, but it is.
Yeah,
no.
yeah. City of Mist is at the top of mine, and everything keeps going on top of it.
Actually, I will say City of Mist is pretty awesome. I've not. I've played a half a session or like an intro session.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I backed it on Kickstarter.
Right.
Way back in the day. But yes, I feel like maybe getting into some of these other genres, sci-fi.
I think so. We definitely have to go into some
Marvel,
of the other genres. I agree with that. Interestingly, Drawstill does have some other genres, at least mentioned in the world lore and stuff.
I think it'll be and same with Kobold Press's TOV. I think there will be other worlds that are they've already established their labyrinth, but but what about some of the other stuff? Number 5 there that we covered.
Yeah, so we talked quite a bit about mechanics, tools, different like varieties of systems and things. I think one of the episodes we had done, we talked specifically about our favorite mechanics that we had seen in other just various in all the different playtests we've done. What was our favorite mechanics? That one was really fun because as someone who loves to do homebrew stuff, it kind of gets me thinking, like, how could I actually bring a mechanic that I love from, like, say, Drawstill or DC20, and how could I bring that into, my 5e setting or whatever homebrew game I'm already running? And that was a lot of fun just to kind of brainstorm and then talk about some of our just favorite things, which just a little hint. One of our favorite ones, I think we actually had several favorites from the same games. And I know that Stormlight came up a lot. We both love the initiative system in Stormlight.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun just kind of to brainstorm some of the different mechanics we've experienced and played with.
Yeah, it's there was a lot of good mechanics that we've seen, and again, these are all in development TTRPG systems that we've been looking at for the most part this last year, and so they're kind of new and exciting, but I look forward to seeing some of the ones from some of the others on our list later.
Right. That are already fully released and available.
Fully released. But we get to talk a little bit about some of the mechanics from Drawstill tonight.
Yes.
And we're gonna go ahead and jump into our full critical look. We did have a first look in an episode earlier this season, and
which, to note, was our highest viewed episode of the season, was just our very general look at the rules and things.
We did go through a lot of the rules, which a lot of the rules, a lot of the character creation stuff, and so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that because we want to focus on the second half of our critical acrostic, because we finally did get to play test it. And if you haven't seen that, definitely go check it out. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Make sure you go check out the playtest. I got to DM. Seth got to play.
I got to play. So good.
Now we'll be able to give a actual review of the game from different perspectives, because I got to see the DM side, you got to see the player side.
Mm-hmm.
One of my D&D players actually played with us, and he created his own character, and so he sent me a long list of kind of information about his thoughts on character creation, which Spurg did great. I won't be able to cover all of it, but we'll definitely hit on some of the points that he talked about in it.
Well, this backer, again, this is a backer packet. And this is the
Right.
first backer
Yes, this
packet
is the very first one.
playtest packet that we've gotten. Like we haven't gotten any new ones. Um, and so they did have character creation details. They did have all 12 ancestries or races, but they only had 5 classes available. But I will say those 5 classes were really cool and exciting. But what does Spurg have to say? Go ahead and give us the
Okay, so the quick
Cliff's
kind of I
notes.
got it over here. He said that at first he thought that the races seemed almost a little bit limited, but then as he started to build, he started to see um, the diversity of it. And so something we covered in the previous video, that in it you get to kind of build out your character. So like if you're building, I think it's called a demon in this one, you get to choose like the wings or the tail, and like but they have different benefits and bonuses. And so almost every race has something of that sort where you get to make something unique. He really liked that. He enjoyed like the building a different like building your culture and picking the categories and things that you're going to be in. Which in it you have like culture and careers. And then he really enjoyed how every class had its own resource. So each class he played a conduit which had piety as a resource, and so you would build up piety, and then you could use that for different abilities. But
Yeah.
every class in the game, the 5 that were in there right now, have some sort of different resource.
Yeah, we'll
Right?
Touch
What
on
was
that
yours,
in a
Seth?
minute for sure.
Okay, and then we'll get
Mine
into
was
it. Yeah.
well, it was Rage because I was playing
Oh yeah.
the equivalent of a barbarian, which was actually called a
Right.
Fury.
Right.
Um, and yeah, well, I'll touch on those mechanics in a minute for sure. But what else? What else does he go into?
He did say that kits were a little bit confusing, which we seen a little bit of that as well. Because really it's intended, at least the best that I could tell, it's intended to not be as specific as like say D&D or really any other TTRPG I've played. It's not like, oh, I have a longsword or I have a warhammer. It's
Hmm.
you have a what was yours called? I forget what the wording
Well,
was. You have
so that's the thing too. The kits are a unique blend
yeah.
of it's a unique blend of gear slash equipment
Hmm.
and abilities and kind of also play style almost.
Right. Yeah.
And so
The kits matter.
yeah, the kits absolutely matter. I kind of really liked it.
Yeah.
How it was.
But
Um,
it's not as
you know,
specific like you have a longsword. It's like you have a two-handed weapon, and
yeah.
like,
So,
you
but
can
mine
you
was
can make
mine
it
was
whatever
called
you want
a
it to be.
my kit was called the Panther. Like it was
Okay.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
it was very, very cool. But it was like the whole premise was that I don't wear armor and that I'm carrying a heavy weapon, and so
Hmm.
that's the premise. But so it's not the big smashy barbarian. It's the quick, agile, doing lots of damage barbarian. And
Right.
so the whole some of the abilities were that. So like I said, there are some. There's a kit signature ability,
Right.
and it's like for me, as long as I moved a certain amount, I did extra damage,
Hmm.
which was pretty cool. And so it was, that makes that's kind of where it is. But
Yeah.
what else did he have there?
Um. He
Anything?
mentioned that the kits, like he did notice that the kits mattered more. I think we just kind of said that the kits matter more because you can't just. At least it didn't seem that you could just swap one thing in or out because the kits actually kind of determined your play style. He did say he didn't really look at complications and he did skills last because there is a very long list of skills and this is intentional.
It's true.
There is there are 60 skills right now. And I don't know how you pick them exactly, but you go through and you choose a certain amount and like the cool thing about skills are if you get to use a skill for something, it's just a +2 to whatever you're doing. If you can explain to the director or the dungeon master, right? If you can explain to the director how you would use that skill, you're allowed to use it. And so it really adds, I don't know, some creative thinking in the game as well, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of what he sent me. He did seem to enjoy it. I think he said it was confusing at first, but that as he went further into it, it got easier. And I think it was the same for all of us, even from the DM side. At this point, it's very bare bones. It's very at this
Well, yeah,
point,
and part of that is
it's
that
still early.
part of that is what we'll touch on in a minute is that
Yeah,
it's basically a Word document at this point.
it is a word. It
So
is a word document. That's it right now.
there's not a lot of art. There's no art in the
There's no art.
document.
Yeah.
There is art, but it's all they just included it as like, oh, here's a bunch of the art so that you can get an idea for it.
Right.
So
Yes. But as far as the documents for the rules and stuff, no art.
yeah,
Just walls of text. and
Yeah.
that's fine. They got it out to us and let us play it, and we had a
Yeah.
blast.
So that's character creation,
Mhm.
role playing opportunities, ample role playing opportunities.
Oh yeah.
I feel so. So in we played the Bay of Black Bottom, which is the
Hmm.
level 1 adventure that came with the backer
Right.
test kit, and it was really fun. It was really
Yeah.
fun. I felt like there was 3, if not 4, encounters. I think we kind of skipped one at the end,
Hmm.
but they weren't all combat. There was one that
Right.
was, but they all. I feel like several of them could have gone either way. So like we could have absolutely rushed down and like fought the
Hmm.
guards in front
Oh
of.
yeah.
Spoilers, by the way, if you've not played Bay of
Right. If
Black
you haven't
Bottom.
played it,
Uh,
yeah.
we could have absolutely rushed down to the cargo hold and attacked the guards
Right.
easily. We had a shadow with us.
Hmm.
Austin played a shadow and did a
Right.
phenomenal job.
Oh, and he had a lot of
Uh,
fun with it too.
yes, he had a
Yeah.
lot of fun. He's been talking with me about it for like the last 2 days. About how he really loved it. And
Excellent.
and and even at level 1, so many cool abilities and powers. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a shadow, he's a rogue, but he's like a magical shadow, and he's also a polder, which is essentially gnomes and halflings combined.
Yeah.
Um, and he like I distracted him with this really cool thing, and I distracted the guards because as this my specific I used Vorma, one of the pre-generated
Yeah.
characters, and I had this ability that under my career I had been a former gladiator, and I
Hmm.
had a career title monologue champion, and it was part of my background, but part of it was that it actually if I could convince people to listen to me, you know,
Hmm.
then it gave my allies basically an edge or an advantage
Right.
on kind of stealth rolls, something.
Yeah.
So he went in there and then he like melded through the wall
Oh, it's so
and
cool.
went
Yeah.
into the cargo hold to look for what we were trying to find. And again, level 1, like
Yeah.
level 1 is
Oh yeah.
so much more powerful in this game, and it instantly made it gave us that tactical and cinematic feel,
Oh yeah.
which has a lot going for it. A
Right.
lot going
Well,
for it.
so in the beginning of the rulebook, they're gonna say that this game is tactical and heroic, and I think they nailed it because
Oh
like
yeah.
you at one point had even asked me because I when we started the actual combat encounter, he asked me, he's like, "Did you scale this down?" Because
Yeah,
it
I
was
did.
3 against 8 enemies. Like
Yeah.
they were vastly outnumbered, and the way that the game is built, and I'm throwing this in the role play section because it wants you to feel like the hero. Like at level 1, I think Austin teleported like 5 times in the fight at level 1. And like he
Yeah, at
felt
least
like that
at least
shadow.
twice, not counting his blade dance.
Yeah, yeah, not counting this blade dance where he went through and damaged like a bunch of enemies, and like
Yeah.
it really wants you to feel like the hero in this moment. It's like you're not just out there, I swing my sword, I swing my sword, I swing my sword. No, you're like level 1 where it's like I'm gonna teleport here, I'm gonna hit these 3 people, and I'm gonna come like it
Yeah.
wants you to feel heroic. And I don't know. As far as
I
all
thought
the
it did a great job.
TTRPGs I've found, this one feels the most
At level
heroic, where
1?
you
Oh
feel
yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Definitely the most
And
at level 1.
and so I think like for role play wise now, even in the like the adventure guide and stuff, there were really cool things in there for role play. We didn't play through all of them, so there was something called voyage vignettes, and the intention of those were to basically make it feel like the passage of time on the
Gotcha.
ship, so it made you feel like you were there for a while. So the one that you did play is where the ring was dropped overboard and there was someone drowning in
Oh,
it.
okay, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of them. There was
And that was a fun little RP opportunity too.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and so those
like
are just built into the adventure. There's like 6 of them, and I think we did 2 of them. So,
yeah,
you know,
that was cool. That was cool. And we were able to use some of our abilities a little bit
right.
to be a part of that. So even though the abilities are very tactical in combat, they can
Mhm.
also be used, and the skills
Right.
in
Skills,
RP.
yeah.
So that's why there's so many skills, I think. So well, integration of lore. Obviously, we're gonna have to explore that more as the game is released. The backer, like
Right.
the lore of this Bay of Black Bottom was fun. It was good. I enjoyed
Yeah.
it. It was a fun little adventure. But as far as you know, how it's going to world build on top of that, I'm sure that there's going to be.
Right.
Matt Colville and MCDM
Hmm.
do a fantastic job, and which they whenever I posted our actual play, they did give us a follow on X/Twitter.
Oh,
So
nice.
if you guys happen to hear this,
We made it.
first of all, props. Thank you for a
Oh,
fun
absolutely.
game. And look, like I said, I know they do a fantastic job with a lot of the lore, but they also do a really good job with mechanics.
Right.
So, but like I said, integration of lore, it's gonna definitely it has that. I feel like with giving such room for cinematic role play
Right.
and combat, that it's gonna have a really good lore element, whether it's
Right.
homebrewed or something that they come up with. So
Yeah. And I will say there is a follow-up adventure to Bay of Black Bottom.
yeah,
So if you guys ever want to play it, I would be down to run it to continue it on.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
which I think would be really fun because it I actually like contemplated just doing at choosing which one to do and just jumping into it. But the follow-up adventure I think would open you up even more to the lore, especially of Black
yeah.
Bottom
If
area.
we want to play in that sometime, I guarantee you I could probably get Austin, if as long as we can schedule it. I'm sure we could get
Yeah.
Austin and probably Spurg back,
I
and then
say
maybe even
Spurg.
probably a couple more people. That way we
Oh
can
yeah, yeah.
include some
It definitely
others.
opens itself up to easily be able to add people to it as well
Yeah,
and continue it out. It seems really cool.
awesome. Well, let's see. That's C.R.I.T.I.C.A.L of Critical for a
Hmm.
critical look. Now we're going to tabletop experience.
Tabletop experience.
Um, we did finally get to play it. So,
We did get to
what's
play.
your initial thought? How what was the
How,
social dynamic of it? How did it feel?
hmm to me, to me it felt really good. There's obviously like the RP in it that you get with most TTRPGs. I think that's one in general. Like you're always gonna have the time for like RP. This one I felt like it, especially with like its skills and its ability to like help each other and to give edges and to give banes and like the effects of like a double edge or a double bane, like things like that. I think made it feel I don't know, feel really good to like play and like RP through things.
Mm-hmm.
I will say as far as like also tabletop stuff like and I think we're gonna get this to the next section too. But in it does say like almost everything tactical is supposed to be played with a gridded map, and so
Yeah,
and we got to utilize that. We got to have some fun
yeah.
with that.
And I think there's something to be said for that. Like I can absolutely enjoy a theater of the mind game.
Hmm.
Like I love Alchemy RPG, and it
Right,
leans heavily into theater of the mind.
right,
As a VTT, it's giving you that cinematic experience. But I do love the maps
yeah.
and the minis, and I think that I could absolutely, even more so than 5e, get into doing that with this game. I feel
Oh,
like.
yeah. Well, even like we talked about, there's so much, and I don't know why. I can't put my finger on why, but it felt like in this there was so much more movement, and
Yeah.
there was a lot more like tactical things happening. And okay, I think I do know why, because a lot of the abilities, like if you just hit someone, the goal is never to like just do damage, like because damage always happens. It's an always hit game, which is throws some people off. I thought it was really intuitive and it was really nice actually.
Mm-hmm.
And when you roll low, it's still not a devastating. You're doing like 2 points of damage. It's nothing big. But I think all the abilities, like I would hit someone and it would like, okay, I rolled a tier 2, so now it's like, okay, 6 points of damage, but push 2, and so they automatically move back 2. And
Yeah.
then like my NPCs have abilities where like, oh, if I land this hit, I get to grapple you, and then I can actually my next move I can like throw you or whatever. But a lot of it, I think a lot of it's intentional that they want to make combat move and be not dynamic.
I mean, we'll talk about it in the mechanics and the combat system,
Yes.
which I feel like we're going to kind of blend into here.
Yeah, I'm kind
But
of blended into it already. It's hard for me
yeah,
not to.
that's okay. But no, I agree. I feel like it does absolutely provide that cinematic and tactical
Yep.
experience. I feel like tabletop play will be pretty quick.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I mean, I think we should just probably move into, let's see. I enjoy the tabletop experience, and I can positively say that that is not always the case with some of these that we've tested.
This is true. This
So
is true.
I really enjoyed it.
Yes,
Um,
as did I.
and so yeah, the tabletop experience as part of our CRIT
Yep.
was good. In-game
Okay.
mechanics, I for critical and I.
Hmm.
In-game mechanics, the rules and the flow of gameplay even for pretty early, were really good.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
some of the in-game mechanics, the initiative, I
Yeah.
thought was really nice and flexible.
Yeah.
It still is a, you know, it's like you roll for initiative, or somebody does, and then basically the initiative roll is just going to determine who goes first. Is it the players or
Right.
the NPCs?
Yeah.
And
And
then
it's
once
really
you have
just
that
you roll 1
established,
d10.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
once you have that established, then it's always going to be, well, if the players won, they go first.
Yeah.
And then an NPC goes, and then a player goes, and an NPC goes, and then a player goes,
Yeah.
or an NPC group if it's
Yeah.
a kind of master and minions
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. So
But
at least in this one, that's all it was we had
yeah,
masters and minions. And that's sort of how it makes you feel heroic because you're meant to maul through the minions,
we
you know?
did maul through the minions, and
Yes.
it brings me back to the episode of Hearth and Hammer where we did the Star Wars one.
Oh yeah.
And I had homebrewed in, stormtroopers, and we called
Right.
them something else, and you were just destroying them left and right because
Oh yeah, yeah.
I gave them like 5 points of health, kind of thing.
Right.
So it was like, yeah, so absolutely, felt that.
Right.
It wasn't quite the same, compared to like, we love the Cosmere RPG initiative system,
Right.
and that one is more of in Cosmere RPG, it's always players, like all the players go,
Yeah.
and take their fast actions, or all the players who choose to do fast actions
Right.
go first. Then
Yep.
all the NPCs who are going to do fast actions. Then all the players who do slow actions, and then all the NPCs who do slow actions.
Yep.
So, it's not quite as the same as that, but
Right.
it's flexible enough that we could have switched out who went first, who went second, who
Yeah.
went third.
Yeah. So you can always choose.
We never did because I feel like we had a
Right.
good rhythm going,
You had a good rhythm. Yep.
but we did change it up because one of the shadow abilities
Mhm.
changed his order in the initiative,
Yeah.
which
You
was
could just go.
awesome. And again, level
Yeah.
one,
Level
level
one.
one.
And he used.
MCDM and Matt Colville, God bless you for making level one feel so good.
Level 1 fun. Level 1 was fun.
Level one fun.
Yeah. And what like that. So he used. I don't remember what his currency was, his points, but whatever his points were, like he could use them like that, and like he could just take the initiative. Like it's like at any point, or like I think it had to be after one of you guys, but after one of you guys, he could choose to just go
His was insight.
insight. Yes,
So the
that's
shadow had insight, and these
yeah,
are all just,
names.
made up names for kind
Yeah,
of the same.
his flavor.
It's
Yeah,
not the same. It's not all the same. Like
right.
the shadow and the what was the other one?
Conduit.
The conduit, which is like a cleric.
Yeah.
They both gained 2 points per turn. The
Right.
fury, as a barbarian, got to roll a D3, which was just a D6,
Yeah.
and I got 1 to 3
Mhm.
per turn. And so there was 3 turns where I got 3 points of rage.
Yeah.
And so I was building and stacking rage points, which then unlocked more abilities.
Yeah.
As we went through
And
combat,
and
we're
also
kind of getting into
the
now, so we're going to go to combat.
right. So I'll talk for a second as we go into that from the DM side, because as we're talking about all these points, the DM, or I'm sorry, director, is not left out of that. The director actually receives villain points.
Yeah.
And you get villain
I love
points
they're
for
called
how.
villain points too.
Yeah, I love that too. So you get villain points based on however many players there are every round. So if I have 5 players, every round I get 5 villain points, and I can stack them and I can store them to use special abilities that all of my NPCs have. And so like one of my NPCs, I think he was also a shadow. He had like, I think it was something like Blade Dance, something, and I could spend 5 villain points, and he could attack a target. He could shift 2 squares, which means he could move without being attacked. Attack another target, and he could basically keep doing that. As I think there was a maximum, but I could have easily hit all of you if I ever had the right lineup, but I never did.
Right. I
But
think
yeah,
it was
or
your scoundrel.
scoundrel. Yes, it was my
But
scoundrel.
I mean, it was very shadow.
It was basically my rogue. Yeah. And but yeah, so you have villain points as the from the DM side. There's a
Yeah,
lot of cool flexibility that you get to do. You also get a whole bunch of NPCs to play with, and it's like because
we
you'll have
did.
a leader and then you'll have like minions, and so like you can have one leader and that leader might have three minions,
Yeah.
and then there's some different like tactical stuff, but you can make you can make the heroes feel like they're really surrounded and they're about to get destroyed, and then someone rolls a good tier 3 and they knock out like two minions, and
And
suddenly the fight's level again.
as you know, like again, we're moving in. We're definitely already talking about our combat system,
Oh yeah,
which is
yeah,
our
definitely in the
C and
combat.
critical. But part of what I want to say is that like part of why it feels so good at level 1, and part of why I feel like it definitely shows, uh, it has a great example of how tactical and cinematic it is. Right? When you said it earlier, I asked you at one point because you had said, "Hey, this is for 5 players.
Right.
I
Yeah.
may have to adjust it." And I was like, well, there's only 3 of us, and you put, 9 villains or NPCs on the
Yeah.
board. I was like, well, did you remember to adjust this?
Yeah.
Especially because if we haven't mentioned it yet, um, combat includes auto hitting. We don't roll for
Yeah.
hitting,
Right.
and so you roll to see if you do tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 damage / effects.
Effects. Yeah.
And so the first couple times the bad guys were hitting us, I was like, man, we're taking some damage.
Right.
But we then realized that how to use the recoveries, and recoveries being able to be
Oh yeah.
used in combat from either on ourselves or by the conduit was helping us use our own recoveries without us having to use our own action.
Right.
Made a big difference. And then
Oh yeah.
after that, I was like, oh well, this is okay. Yeah, this totally makes sense. Like we're
Right.
gonna take damage. We're gonna take damage. We're gonna get bloodied maybe multiple times this
Yeah.
fight. But
Well, that's
then we're
actually an
just
interesting switch
we're
in
just
it
gonna
though, because
recover.
it's
We're
not
just gonna
damage.
recover. It's true.
Right.
It's not damage. It's stamina.
Yeah. It's
Um,
stamina,
but
and you get
so we're gonna
winded.
take our stamina damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
It definitely. I mean, it's still damage, but it's
yeah.
trying to flavor it like, oh, you're not just getting cut up and stabbed a bunch. It's like,
Right.
oh, you're getting knocked off balance, and you're having this like daunting fight. And when you die, that's when the sword comes in and hits you in the chest. Um,
Yeah.
which it makes sense.
But that the combat absolutely um, has that strategic element too,
Hmm.
or tactical element, because even at level 1 we were able to combo off of each other as the player group. um, I was able to come in and I grappled or grabbed a guy,
Hmm.
and then we were pushing and like knocking some people around, and part of that then too also set up a really cool blade dance where Austin with his shadow was like, like he basically did the whole like flitting from enemy to enemy, and he took out a couple of them. um, yeah, it definitely had that feel. It was very strategic, and I think as you play more, it's just going to expand on that, especially as we
Right.
know how to play.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but like I said, I think that the auto hitting felt really good. We were a little worried about that at first, and then obviously
Hmm.
we figured out that it becomes more tactical because you're having to balance your individual resources,
Hmm.
your stamina, and your recovery. And then also comboing off of your party on top of that. So even when it wasn't our turn, I feel like there was things for us to do and pay attention to.
Right.
And even though we had never played it before, I didn't feel like we were just sitting around waiting,
Right.
which was important.
Right.
So
I agree. I thought the combat was really good, really
yeah,
interesting, and something I'm going to throw in combat here. This is the part at the end we didn't get to do because our monologue champion was too good at what he does. But
I
there
did
is
get
an
a
actual
natural success. So
yeah, yeah. So there is a fully fleshed out negotiation system. And I've personally never played with that. But your NPCs always start out with like an interest, a like patience, and something else, meaning like how much they like you.
Yeah.
And basically, as you talk to them, if you hit on like a motivation, then their interest goes up. And your goal is to get their interest to a certain point before basically their patience runs out and they're done talking to you. But at the same point, you can hit a pitfall, and if you do that, their patience goes down, and I think
Yeah.
their interest also follows. And so it's a really interesting system. I've never played a game with a negotiation system. I'm going to put it into the combat here because it is a fully fleshed out
I
system.
mean, combat
Um,
or maybe in-game mechanics. We could
I mean,
call it
in-game
under
mechanics
that.
probably a better fit for it because it's
Yeah.
meant to be more like a puzzle, like an
It's
RP puzzle.
Yeah, it's a new kind of social mechanic or social
Yeah,
encounter, really.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and yeah, after we, like I said, I rolled a natural success,
Yeah,
natural critical
yeah,
success, and
you
so we
you got a tier
kind
three
of,
on it, so
and because we were
yeah,
kind of at the end of our
we
time,
were definitely at the end. Yeah,
we were like, well, you know what, you did it, but
right, right.
but
And the adventure said if you rolled that, basically you're done.
yeah,
They accept what you said, and
cool,
so it worked out. But it's really cool. That's something I'm really excited about.
yeah. Um, then we had artwork as part of our critical
Mhm.
look,
Right, the
C
A in
R
that
I
artwork and
T
design. Yeah,
I C A A C A L and artwork and design.
yeah,
Obviously, there's no design yet. It was a wall
right.
of text Word document, essentially.
Yep,
But they did put artwork in there for us to have
yep,
a look. And we showed it
yeah.
off in our first episode where we talked about this. And so
Right.
go back and check that
So
out.
make sure you
We
check
showed
that one
off
out. Yeah,
we showed off all the artwork during that point,
right.
and it looks fantastic what they've showed so far.
It does. It does. It absolutely does.
I like the style.
Hmm.
And then lastly, learning curve.
Learning curve. Yep.
Um, the because this was a early backer playtest pack, the initial wall of text Word document was pretty daunting.
Right.
That said, once we started playing,
Hmm.
I felt like it came pretty easily and pretty naturally.
Right. Yeah, I feel like, and this is hard to tell if it's like because all of us were experienced TTRPG players, so I can't say that it like is intuitive, but to me it felt intuitive. Now,
Yeah.
with that said, the wall of text, even the character sheets at this point are kind of daunting. I had a couple of your guys' character sheets pulled up just so I could reference back to them
Mm-hmm.
and help whenever we had questions and stuff. But right now, it's all a little daunting. Now, I know that is going to be fixed before the game actually comes out. There will be
Yeah.
artwork, character sheets will be laid out in a more organized way. At this point, I think it would be the learning curve is pretty high. But once you start playing, I feel like it's pretty intuitive.
I mean, I don't know if I would say it's high learning curve,
Yeah, I
but
think if you
it
were to just
definitely
read it and try to learn the game,
it
to me
could.
it seemed difficult.
But like any system, learning to navigate the character sheet is half of it.
Mhm. Right.
And honestly, once we understood what each item on the character sheet was, it was actually
Right.
not that bad.
Wasn't too bad. Okay. All right. See, I didn't work with the character sheet as much as you guys did. I only referenced
Yeah.
it when we were having a problem with something,
It was
and then I was
definitely
looking
daunting
through
at
trying to
first,
find
but then
stuff.
when you realize that there's I mean, I'll just show it here real quick,
Oh, there we go.
since I have it.
However, if you're watching the podcast, you should jump over to the YouTube video
Yeah, absolutely.
if you want to see what we're talking about.
Mostly, I'm just gonna say there wasn't a lot of layout done, but it was basically just 3 columns of text.
Right.
But there were some little symbols that kind of like encapsulated each ability.
Mhm.
And once you realize that each one of those was for an ability by itself and contained all the rules for that ability that you pretty much needed to know, it became a lot easier to navigate.
Right.
For example, like obviously over here we have all of our stats, and down here there's a lot more of the skills and stuff. But when you look at the abilities, okay, like a signature ability, I'm going to zoom in here for a second so that
Mhm.
we can see it. But basically, it really makes it kind of easy to understand, and it also really helps you understand the auto hit and 3-tier system. And so
Right.
because
Very true.
because you have keywords, so this is a melee attack with a weapon, right? And that makes a difference because then there's an area attack or an area melee with a weapon. And a couple of times we ran into, is this a keyword ability that I can then use to trigger another ability? which is important to remember.
Right.
But it's an action. Its target is one creature or object. Has a reach of 1, which is base to base
One
contact,
square, yeah.
and then it has what you have to roll. Which again, I think we forgot to mention this, but this is a 2d10 system
10, yeah. Mm-hmm.
with sometimes using a d6 as a d6 or as a d3.
Right.
But then like if you roll less than 11, you do 3 damage on this particular ability. If you roll 12 to 16, it's 8 damage, and 17 plus is 16 damage. And that's like a signature ability, but it has an effect. If you move up to 3 squares straight towards the enemy before an attack, you deal extra damage equal to the distance you moved. So if you ran 10, 6 squares, you do an extra 6 points of damage.
Right. Which is awesome.
Which is very cool.
It's kind of what I said earlier. It really motivates you to move, right? Whether you're pushing someone, running to someone.
Yeah, for this particular character build, absolutely.
Right.
And I thought it was a lot of fun. But that's just showing that real quick. And there's a lot more on here. For the ancestry, the culture, and then the resource, which was the growing rage. You gained more abilities for having rage the more rage you had. And so yeah, there's a lot to it, but I think that literally once you knew how to navigate the character sheet, it was a lot easier to understand.
Became easier, yeah.
So yeah, I felt like, again, I feel like the learning curve was just daunting because of it being a playtest kit.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
I think it will be a lot easier, even for new players, once it comes out.
Right. And that's kind of my thought, is once it comes out and there's design and there's pictures and all that, like I don't think that it'll be very difficult to learn.
Yeah,
but
I agree. Well, awesome. I think that kind of covers it.
That is our full critical.
Our full critical look at Draw Steel after we finally had our playtest.
Yes.
And had a lot of fun. I know Austin did. We would definitely be revisiting this. But like we mentioned kind of at the top of the show, this is our last episode of the season. And so we will take a break for the holidays. We'll have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's in there. And then come back in early spring, still kind of winter, I guess, technically. Right. Yeah. But all of our Love Thy Nerd podcasts are, finishing their seasons and going into this break. If we come back with some sort of Christmas episode, we'll let you know. So make sure you follow us not only on YouTube but also on Instagram or X, and we'll announce it. When we do that, if we're able to make that happen. I don't know, honestly. But but we are part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. Let us know about that, Jeff.
Absolutely. We are part of the, like you said, the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. On our network, there is about everything nerdy that you can imagine, from the TTRPG space like we're in right here, to wrestling, to today in nerd culture, to tabletop games. We cover kind of everything. But what we are is we are a bunch of nerds that love games and love nerdy stuff, and we love Jesus, and we want to share all our passions with the world. And we are absolutely privileged to be part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. And if you guys are curious about any of the things that we're doing at LTN, make sure you go and check out the other podcasts on the network, and maybe jump in the Discord and see what all we got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even though we're part of that, we do have our own dedicated YouTube channel now. And so be sure to check that out at youtube.com/@the RPG Rundown LTN.
Exactly.
Give us a like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. Obviously we had kind of started building up the podcast and the channel before we had this dedicated channel as part of, and we were part of the Love Thy Nerd channel itself. So come join us on this one. Leave a comment. It helps us out tremendously. Also, we just love to engage with you. But yeah, for now, thanks for sticking around with us for season 3. Go check out some of our other episodes. Again, let us know what you think.
Absolutely.
And from our table to yours, thanks for joining the RPG Rundown.
Until next time, may your rolls be epic and your stories legendary.